Better than like a snake. Burmese pythons.
If it was a snake, I'd be done.
Yeah,
there wouldn't be any mice though for a snake, I'll tell you that. What is happening, everybody? It is PGA DFS strategy time here on Tuesday, 1 o'clock. Listen, if you were looking last year, we might have bounced around times. Well, not this year. The 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock hour is going to be our time. And we got the dream team back. Ben Rasa and I here today to talk about the Sony Open, the first full field event of the year. And typically when a lot of those one and done contests you guys know about are up. So Ben and I are going to give our strategy and of course our pick at the end of this show. So stay tuned for that. And we're going to get right into some fun stuff here. We're going to talk about Yahoo in a second. But first, Ben, before we do that, I need to ask you, 180 points from Cam Smith. Will we ever see it again in PGA DFS? That was insane last week.
Yeah, people were scoring like 800 in GP. Like the teams,
700 in cash or something like that.
Yeah, no, it was. You're right. I've never seen that. I can't remember, looking at that, and it was just a perfect storm of scoring conditions. It's an easy course and whatnot. Yeah, I'm looking. I had a lineup with 805, and it was just like, good job, you cashed. Like what? What are we doing here?
Yeah, a lot of people ask, why does this happen? And actually, Justin Thomas made it very clear this morning why it happened. Soft conditions with a ton of rain. We'll see that again here this week. Basically no rough, widest fairways on the entire PGA Tour circuit. Not maybe so much this week, but there's no wind. There was absolutely no wind or any adverse conditions whatsoever. I'm going to see that again this week. So I do expect scoring to be very low again. And it is the Sony Open, played at Waialae Country Club. We're going to get into that here. But now it'll be time to tell you about Yahoo, our sponsor of the show. And we've partnered with Yahoo Fantasy this season to bring you an offer that is almost too good to be true. Thanks to our partnership with Yahoo, we have an exclusive deal that gets you a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, which, Ben, that's going to give you some pretty great tools. The NFL playoffs, PGA DFS. We got NBA in full swing, so a ton of stuff you're going to get with that. So you heard that right. You're going to get a free month. To qualify, you need to be a new to Yahoo sign up for an account via the link in the video description that you're going to see there. And all you're going to do is deposit and play. That's it. Yahoo's going to send us your name after that, after you play in your first paid contest, and we will reach out to you via email with your free coupon. So that's pretty great. If you need immediate access because you want to play today, email support@awesemo.com and we will get you set up. Just to emphasize, of course, that is new to Yahoo users only there. So a really great tool to get started. Okay, now let's talk about Waialae Country Club and the Sony Open. 132 players, Ben. Driving accuracy has crept up in years past. It's now at 63% and a ton of greens in regulation. So why is it so that if you miss the fairway here, it's not that big of a deal?
Yeah, again, it's another course that obviously, the penalty for hazards at some of these places around, some of it you're in the drink, others you're pitching out. Not so much here. And again, I think that caters to, it's a great 2-week event. I think if you were fortunate enough to be in the Tournament of Champions, you do have a leg up on the competition. I think some of the things that you could take from Kapalua translate here. You're not going to be punished off the tee. And then, I'm not saying course history is the end all be all because we know how that goes. But I do think you see these Kevin Na, Cam Smith, Matt Kuchar types, Patton Kizzire. You get a feel for what you may need to do here.
Kind of not so great drivers of the golf ball, but are pretty much good at everything else. That's seemed to be, a target here. Brendan Steele kind of fits in that category. He's not a great driver, but he's okay. He's pretty decent and been playing very well here. So 132 players this week. It is a full field that is made up of 4 Monday qualifiers. I think there was one there. Andy Ogletree. Just thought I'd mention him. Maybe we get to see him this year manifest into something, Ben. I had high hopes for him. I'm not going to lie to you. A couple of other additional sponsor invites I want to bring up. There's actually 2 that I think are really important or could be. First one is Takumi Kanaya, 7,400. This guy is on a run of golf, including a top 10 at the Zozo Championship, a PGA Tour event. He hasn't finished worse than 31st since the Open, Ben. Any interest? I know he's 7,400 this week, but he's playing great golf.
So normally I don't get involved with guys that we don't see, but this is a player that I've seen enough of. Kanaya has played in some big time events. We see him sometimes at like WGCs, certainly at majors, but it's not like this is his first venture into just a standard PGA Tour event. You mentioned the Zoizo. He's got some experience here. He's missed the cut both times, but he has played it. I'm not in love with it. I'm not jamming him, but I will look to him even at that price point. I think that he's a legitimate player we're going to see a lot of.
So really cool stat here. There's been 3 Japanese golfers that have reached #1 amateur in the world and won the Asian Pacific Amateur, which gets you into the Masters. I just mentioned Kanaya. Obviously, Hideki Matsuyama is the other. And the third is the newest #1 ranked amateur in the world playing here this week. His name is Kajita Nakajima. And if I messed up the pronunciation, Ben, I apologize. But we also saw him at the Zozo Championship. He came in and tied for 28th. He is still an amateur, but he's been playing on the professional ranks and doing very well in Japan. Just won an event there, one of their biggest events too. So do we want to be early with a golfer who has clearly got some pedigree, or is this a wait and see approach with a guy that could be something eventually?
So if you really are confident in your ability to know who's going to be the Hovland or the next Rahm versus who's going to be, we brought up Andy Ogletree. A lot of people thought that he might, and he still could be.
Could be. Yeah.
I tend to be late. I tend to say, okay, let me see something, and then maybe I can buy in later. But I think that's, a personal preference. If you've seen this kid and you say, you know what, I believe this is the lowest we'll ever see him, he's going to be a real player. Well, maybe you buy early. For me, I have no idea. So I tend to wait and see.
Now, again, I think I like this event. Obviously, Sony being a Japanese company, they really try and get the influence. I love giving the opportunity for the kid to play because #1 ranked amateur in the world. I mean, you don't get there without being a very good golfer. So I'm excited to see what we get out of him. All right, now let's talk about a couple of trends in a new segment here. You're going to find these every single week. Most of the time, Ben and I align perfectly and say it's more noise than anything else. But I want to bring up and see if Ben's going to buy any this week and which ones he's going to be selling full force. So first one is, and as we get into trends, Ben, I think this is a good question, a good time to bring up something that Brian just asked in the chat. How far back are you looking in your strokes gained data to try and get a profile of a player when analyzing him for the current week?
So it's a great question. It's a difficult question to answer just because of this. So there's a couple different things. When a guy, you have to make sure what you're looking back is not just rounds. Like some guys, if you look at their past 24 rounds, it takes you back like a full calendar year. Other guys, it takes you back like only 2 months. And that data is much more important. Second thing for me is who the player is. Like if Dustin Johnson, if his last 12 or 16 rounds are bad, I've seen plenty. I know it. If it's a guy who's new to the tour and I don't have a ton of information, I tend to weigh what he's been doing lately more, heavily, because I think that those guys are more likely to ride form or turn a corner in their careers. So no straight answer, but I think for me that 16, 20, 24 range is what I look at, but I make sure that the time period also checks out.
Yeah. One more question on that topic, kind of a different one. At what point do you turn the corner and say Colin Morikawa is the best iron player in the world? It's not just 12 rounds.
Yeah. Again, so that's the kind of stuff where you have to separate. Is it just noise? Is it just variance? Or has a guy, even with putters, there was a time where Webb Simpson, not a great putter. Then he found something and it was like, well, is he going to regress? Or is he just, and on the flip side, a guy like Ricky, amazing putter forever. Is he going to regress the other way, or has he lost his putting? I think that's all the little things we're weighing. And I'll actually throw out a random guy from this tournament. Again, I don't think this is a big deal. I just want to use him as an example. Hao Tong Lee is here. Hao Tong Lee at one point was a serious player.
Almost won the Open Championship. I mean,
he lost basically all the ability to drive the ball to the point where he's a non-factor. Now he's shown a little form. So if you look back for any conceivable time, there's no way you would get to Hao Tong Lee, but you have to weigh, is that bad data now? Has he fixed something that allows him to play? I think those are little things when you're looking at golf data, you have to separate from injury to just some guys who have lost their ability to play and then refound it.
I mean, listen, this guy was the next thing coming from China and dropped all the way to 463rd in the world. He was in the top 25, maybe not top 25. I think his top ranking after the Dubai win that he had was like 32nd. Still a real quality golfer coming off a second place finish at the Volvo China. So like you said, maybe a spring of form that will get him back. All right, couple of trends. Here's the first one. We know about this. If you've been following PGA DFS, certainly you know about this stat that I'm going to give you. 8 of 10 winners have played the Tournament of Champions the week before, 8 of the last 10. Okay, that's maybe I'll buy into that, maybe not. But listen, if you won last year, you were probably a pretty great golfer. Sure, there were a couple of odd wins that maybe you and I could be like, how did this guy win? Or what did this guy win? But for all intents, most of the best golfers were there last week. All right, how about this one? 24 of the last 26 winners have played at least twice at the Sony Open. What do you make of that? Because it's not like this golf course is like Augusta and you need to know everything about it. What do you make of that one?
I don't make a ton of it. My honest thought about it is that Hawaii is an amazing place to be, and people tend to play this event frequently. So like most guys in the field have, if they come once, they tend to play it more. And the guys that are getting here for the first time are usually guys we haven't really heard of and newcomers on tour. I do think there is something, though, not just the best players in the world, to having gotten reps at Kapalua. I do think that's a trend. We saw it last year with Kevin Na. Again, they're the best players in the field, but I also think it really helps.
A couple of these stats, our buddy Jeff Ulrich, he loves to put these out there, just as trends. So follow him on Twitter if you don't, at the Fantasy Grind. Another one I get this from is at PGA Splits. He's another guy that loves to look at these trends. So take a look at them on Twitter. Last one I want to give you. Okay. This is the first event of the year. So why do you think 8 of the last 10 winners had a 9th place finish or better in at least one of their last 3 events prior to the Sony? So this is going back a couple of months. Does that mean form is really carrying over this far? I tend to believe it does.
I think there's something to the swing season with that. Now, there's many unquantifiable variables about the world we live in now that who knows if that stuff even affects what these guys are doing, their practice schedules, their reps, in terms of playing golf over the winter. But I do think that, again, particularly for players that I think are on the cusp, the Maverick McNeelys, the Seamus Power, guys that are taking that next step, I think it is form that can carry over. We've seen Taylor Gooch as a name during the swing season as well. I think there's something to that.
Me as well. And we're going to talk about those guys a little bit more in depth and comparing to a couple of other guys at the top of the board right now. And I'm going to tell you about before we do is our PGA product. Ben and I and Alex and the rest of the team have compiled a great set of tools that you can use, and we're going to be sharing a little bit here on the show. And of course, if you want to check out the free tool for PGA today, it is the Top Golfers tool. If you're ready to join us here on the Awesemo Plus side, well, you can get a Awesemo Plus weekly pass for just $29.95, and you can use the promo code PGA Strategy Show and get 25% off your first week. So check that out. And we have PGA packages. You just want to join us on that side that start as low as $3.95 a week. So stop guessing, start winning, and join Awesemo Plus today. Now, Cam Smith, 8,300 last week, highest known player on the slate. Pretty much if you didn't have him, you had really struggling to cash. This week at 11,200, Ben, he's got to win by 6 for you need to have him in your lineup. So are you taking the approach like I am that even if he wins, you don't need him in your lineup, or do you think you need him as part of your core this week?
I mean, obviously, if the guy goes out there and just, if he gets it done to that level, it's going to be a problem, but it's hard to win golf tournaments. I mean, it's a very difficult thing. Most likely he's not going to win no matter who he is. And I'm not overly concerned about that. I do think the generic, and I'm guilty of this like everyone else, once the guy wins, nobody likes to play him the next week. He's still a great player, and now he's in a weird, awkward spot because Bryson is withdrawn.
Yep.
My first thought is to not play him and to play some of these guys in the 10K range, but I think everyone's going to be mostly on that same wavelength.
Yeah, and Doug brings up a great point. Since Cam Smith went to that mullet, he has been pretty much unstoppable. I mean, he really has.
He's unbelievable.
He really is. Now, at 11,200, this is the strategy that I'm going with this week. You don't need him in your lineup unless he wins by 5 or more. If he wins by 5 or more, of course, you're going to need him. I don't think he'll do that at this course, even though he is a former winner. He did talk. I listened to his press conference and read a few of the excerpts from his interviews. it looks like, Ben, that he said that it was challenging mentally to stay hyper focused to be able to beat Jon Rahm, who was playing great golf as well. So maybe we do see a little bit of lag here this week. But we've seen Justin Thomas win both events in Hawaii before, so no reason why Cam Smith can't do it. Next on the board is Hideki Matsuyama. I think you and I both agree that if we said the winner was going to be minus 30, Hideki would have no chance. He's just not a good enough putter to get to minus 30, and that ended up being the case, but he looked pretty good elsewhere. Is 10,600 a little bit too much for you to dive into Matsuyama here?
No, I think that I don't mind it. This is a better suited event for him. I liked him last week quite a bit, and he just couldn't really get it going. The irons were fine. He came in 13th. No real harm done to you. Just really cold with the putter. So we're going to need that to flip. Natural starting point, obviously. Yeah, I think Hideki makes a lot of sense, even though, again, we do need the putter to eventually cooperate.
Yeah, we sure do. Webb Simpson is a big part of the talk here at Awesemo.com. And of course, make sure you guys like and subscribe to our channel here to get notified of all of our content when it comes live on YouTube. He's been a part of my fades video for what feels like a perennial amount of time, just always there. But Ben, this week, 10,500, mild ownership, somewhere below 20%. Do you think that the actual lag for Simpson, first time playing this event in a couple of years, not playing the TOC the week before, might cost him a few strokes?
I don't particularly like the spot. I usually don't like to play Webb Simpson to varying degrees of success. Hasn't really played a ton of golf, obviously RSM. I think this is a fine course for him, and it's been that way in the past. But at the same time, Webb has been, I don't know, just a little, I don't even want to say erratic, but it's just not as crisp as we had seen in earlier form, particularly in 2020. So for me, I'd rather play Decky. I'd rather play Sanjay. I'd rather play Leishman. Can't play them all. Webb's a great player, but not my preferred target.
Listen, Sanjay and Leishman are both in fuego right now. Both are playing really good golf. And if you faded them at all, it really hasn't worked for you. So do you think that it's too much salary allocation, Ben, as part of strategy to play both him and Leishman? Do you think we're allocating too much, where we got to split off one, say down to the Gooch Connors range, or you think we can play both this week?
No, I mean, this is a full field. So unlike last week where when you did things, it was just tough because you only had, 8, 10 options in some of these like full ranges. Here you have dozens and dozens of players. You double up north of 10, you're still at like $7,400 for your remaining 4 golfers. That's plenty of room to navigate. So I have no problem with that strategy. I plan to take it on some of my lineups.
Yeah, and Stewie kind of just mentioned the stars and scrubs approach. It was great timing. Thank you for that. That's kind of where I'm leaning here. Again, we'll talk about a different core that if you want to go more balanced, that I'm really excited about. Starting with, and I think it's a good time to bring up Corey Connors. One of the first guys, obviously Simpson didn't play last week, neither did Connors, but here's a great stat I saw this week. Connors has gained strokes putting in about 4 tournaments in his entire career, total, each year combined. So number 1 strokes gained putting for Corey Connors in his entire career is at Waialae Country Club. There's probably something to that, Ben. We know as good as ball striking is, so at 9,600, is he a good place to start? Oh, or do you think the rust factor is giving him a little bit too high of a price?
I mean, I'm not in love with the price, but if it is true, and who knows truly, but if it is, if he really, there's something with these greens that he likes. I mean, Corey Connors, if you give him putting, is unstoppable. He's one of the best ball strikers in any field, very consistent player, just a good player. And he also gains off the tee quietly in every event. He's not a masher, but he knows what he's doing. Obviously, can't ignore it. So this is a guy that in all his, as you mentioned, appearances here, looked really good with the flat stick. If that continues, he's going to make a great second man in or a great first man in a balanced build.
So I got to ask you, because Joe in our chat is bringing it up. It's got to come to an end, right? He's not a good putter. What is it then about this course? Now, I will say it's easier greens. We know that. All the players have said that. Maybe that's what it is, really.
Very possible. I mean, I'm sure there's, just like anything, there's probably elements that it could be random or that there's just something that catches this guy's eye. There are certain courses that certain players, they just say, you know what, it's not for me. Or these greens, he's reading them correctly and they're not overly daunting. I think that is something that's possible. And clearly, if you believe that, Corey Connors gets a big boost.
He does. The last 4 golfers that we have not talked about in this range all played last week. So I want you to rank them for me, and I'll give my just little tidbit when I go through them. Kevin Na actually probably played the best out of the rest of these 4. Lost strokes putting and still found the top 15 of the event. That's certainly a good thing. Abraham Answer and Harris English looked pretty poor all week, not going to lie. Maybe they really need to knock off the rust. And Taylor Gooch looked fine, just didn't putt that well. So I like Kevin Na and Taylor Gooch much more than English and Answer. Did you see anything out of those other 2 guys that would change my mind?
No, I definitely didn't see anything that would change my mind. The one thing I would point out is that when you're as good as you have to be in the TOC, it may not matter. And I'll just cite Kevin Na. I liked Kevin Na a lot. I remember distinctly a lot at the TOC last year, and he finished dead last. And then he won Sony. His stats from the TOC last year look as bad as Answers this year. So if I had to pick one of the 4, it would be Taylor Gooch for me. I think his ball striking is immaculate. The putter will come. But I wouldn't just discard guys solely based off 4 rounds at a laid back event.
Yeah, Brandon Smith in our chat says a bounce back week for Answer. And listen, you're going to get him at pretty low ownership. Him and Na are both, and English for that matter, both trending around 10%. So that's pretty good, especially for a guy that is showing us some upside in the past couple of months. So, okay, let's head down to our value section here. And also want to let you guys know again, got about not enough likes here. So I'm going to pull Ben and a Josh up the likes up here. And of course, if you guys haven't already subscribed to our channel, do so. But let's talk about Kevin Kisner. He's projected to be under 10% this week. Of course, check out the full fields projections as for this week on Awesemo.com/PGA/ownership-projections as part of our premium product. Trending under 10% and looked really solid last week. So do you want to go to Kevin Kisner or some of the other guys that perform well? I'll say like Cam Davis and Eric Van Rooyen.
Yeah, so it's a good range. I think you've got a lot of names here. Guys who played last week, EVR, I have no problem with that. No problem with Cam Davis and maybe some like driver heavy. But then you've got guys who didn't play last week, the Russell Henleys of the world. Maverick is a name to keep an eye on. Interesting little range here. So, and then Matt Jones, I mean, what was going on last week? He's like 30 under. He still loses. That's a tough scene.
It's an insane scene, actually, when you really think about it. Gets a big bump here at 8,400. I don't mind him. It's tough for me because it was such a big week for him that if you look at the baseline, right, strokes gain baseline, and there's a lot of different avenues that you can go with this. There's a company out there, Data Golf, does a great job of kind of calculating true strokes gained. And when you match it up with what they did last week, John Rahm wasn't really that high out of form comparatively. Cam Smith obviously was a little high, but you get down to Matt Jones and it looked like a peak week for him. Does that mean that it's going to stay that way? Well, that's always the bet. But at 8,400, you're not getting what you got last week, which is 2% ownership or 4% ownership at the minimum price. So I think you're investing maybe a little bit too much there. We'll see if he can translate it. I think I'd rather go to Eric Van Rooyen, Ben. And I want to tell you about Van Rooyen. You happen to know what happened to him on Sunday?
No, but I'm sure it was something stupid.
Oh my God, it was insanely stupid. I can't wait to tell you. So he was hanging around the leaderboard, first page of the leaderboard, pretty much all week. I'm sure when you were following, you saw his name 10th or better a lot of the week. He got to 11 on Sunday. 11 is probably one of the most beautiful holes at Kapalua. It's a par 3 downhill. You're looking straight out at the Pacific Ocean. Got the whales in the background. 12th hole, the one behind it, is the hole that DJ almost had the hole in one on the par 4. There's a massive drop on the cart path from 11 to 12 that runs down. If your ball goes on it, it's going to run about 120 yards. And guess what happened to Van Rooyen? He hits it long of the green, just trickles onto the cart path, and I mean just, and the thing takes off. 120 yards away, has to drop, hitting his third over the air, ends up making double, and you could tell it just totally derailed his entire week. Something that would never happen probably if he hit 98 golf balls there. 100 golf balls, he maybe, hits one. That was the one. And it totally derailed it. It moved him from the top 10 to 25th. And with that, ownership is basically gone. But he looked really good all week. So I think I'm going to go back to Van Rooyen, especially with low ownership. Does that story make you want to buy in more, given the fact that it was only one hole that basically took him out of the event?
Yeah, so it's always something with this guy. I do think that
the problem.
not all scores are equal. I'd certainly would rather play him than Matt Jones. Maverick is a guy, though, I have a lot of interest in. I really do. He's a crazy high variance putter. He seems like he's very close. He came in second at Fortinet in the swing season. Maverick, I think, is on the short list of guys that could really explode this year. So I have no problem with EVR, but I like Maverick a lot.
Okay, another guy that I think is getting not enough love this week after a nice bounce back week last week is Cam Davis. Guy seeing Kapalua, he was one of the top debutantes there for the first time, came in a tie for 10th, got that scoring back, that elite scoring I talk about, we see with him. He's got a 9th place finish here a couple of years ago. So Ben, are you going to jump back on Cam Davis with me right now, projected under 10% owned?
Yeah, I think Cam Davis is not the prototypical build for this course, but that's okay. It doesn't always have to be the Kevin Nas of the world. You can do it differently. And he's played this event. He's destroyed off the tee. He's lost strokes gained putting in all 3 events that he's played here at Sony. So if you get anything more than that, it's kind of gravy at this point. I don't mind it. He's a great scorer. You have Seamus right there. I like him as well, who played last week. And he's just quietly another guy that it seems like he's truly turned the corner. You can look at his old data. I would discard it because I don't think he's the same golfer as he was, a couple years ago.
When he was giving us literally a cut sweat every
week.
And even when he was a sure thing to make the cut, he'd make double on the last, needing to get up and down. Just crazy. Some crazy cut sweat stories of Cam Davis. He is seemingly past that. All right, let's go back up the board a bit because I did skip over a couple of guys that played last week and the highest owned golfer in this price range. Let's start with him, Russell Henley, a former winner of the event, has been circling that winner's circle for maybe 18 months. Is this the breakthrough week for Henley, or am I going to be asking you that every week?
Probably the latter. I mean, yeah, Russell Henley's irons are electric, world class. Guy's a winner. Obviously, he's got experience. He can come out and win. He's played Sony about a decade straight. He won here in 2013. Like, it's everything that you want. It's hard with Russell Henley. I think some of the tool, I'll let our tools do the work for a guy like that. Want to see where he's owned, want to see what we're looking at, because there's a lot of options here. I've already mentioned Maverick and Seamus and EVR. I'm not opposed to Henley, but he's not at the top of the list either.
Yeah, what do you make? 30% there? Is that just going to be too much for you to play him, or
yeah,
give
that's
him
that's not going to fly.
I didn't think so. Jason Kokrak, maybe in the category of a bounce back week, but I want to put an ear of caution here. He won the event in the fall, his last start, but he had said that he was thinking of withdrawing on Tuesday or Wednesday because he felt so bad about his golf swing. Then you see that he lost in every strokes gained category last week, and maybe there's just a little bit of a trend with Kokrak, and I don't think I want to get behind it. I think I want to pass here. I would rather go to Billy Horschel, but I'm not overly excited about either of them.
Yeah,
Kokrak. If I'm going to pay that, I'd rather play Kisner.
I think that's fair. I try to get to Gooch or bump down. Kokrak looked just not, it wasn't working. He lost a ton of strokes on the approach. He lost a ton of strokes on the greens. Can he flip it? Anyone can flip it, but you're really asking a lot. I think that at this, and again, I know we should probably lead with this, and it's just a small thing, but for people who are new to golf, last week, all your golfers got 4 rounds. This is a real event with a cut. Like if he starts slow, he's just going to get cut, and there's no coming back from that. I worry about his miscut equity a lot.
Let's talk about Seamus Power for a second. You brought him up briefly. I wanted to mention, looked like all systems go. The stats look very similar to Taylor Gooch. Neither of them putted well. They come here this week to an easier course on the greens. I assume you like Power as well?
I do. Again, I think that Seamus, Cam Davis, Maverick, these are guys that they're turning the corner. Some of them have broken through. Some of them are about to. This guy's just a much better player. A couple of years ago, this was a flat min 6K golfer in these type of fields, and he wasn't playable. And now he's a legit contender. The guy is just playing good golf. He can putt, played fine last week. I have no problem with Seamus.
You mentioned one of the guys, Henley, right? That's played here for a decade. Well, the guy that's played here for 2 decades, or just about, and has made the cut in every single start, including last year's top 10. I'm talking about Chucky 3-Sticks. I saw the chat mention him a little earlier. We're on him now. So Is this the play, Charles Howell the third, chucking 3 sticks because he's never missed a cut here, or does it finally end here this week?
I mean, he had a couple courses like that, and some of them in recent years he has missed. It's not like he can't miss the cut. It's very, very safe. He putts really well here. He's someone where the data actually, it's like, all right, well, this guy knows this course inside and out at this point. I think he's fine at 8K. You may use him in low variance contests. I'm not running to the window to play him. I'd rather play Seamus, but at that point, when you're talking about like a sample size of like 15 years at an event, clearly there's something to take for that, even though the guy's game is probably, it's evolved with his age.
Next guy kind of is a little bit odd to me because he's turned into a spike player, meaning you're getting very little consistency, but you're getting that random top 5. And he's done it here twice. I'm talking about Brendan Steele. 7,900 this week for me is not a price I like to pay for him because I think you're allocating a little too much equity for the volatility. But if there's one golf course that I would like to click it would be here. A 4th and a 2nd. It came 2nd to Cam Davis. So Ben, Brendan Steele, maybe, or just not enough going in the direction for him.
Depends, lineup dependent on how many I make, but probably on the outside looking in. Another guy that I think the only reason he's even in this conversation is course history. And when course history is good, I like to see my guys playing well at an event, but it can't be the only thing. Like if the guy is doing nothing, I find it a big reach to think that he's just going to conjure up what he's done at an event, barring some really unique style of a course, like an RBC Heritage. This is not that. For Steele, I'd rather play basically everyone around him, just like him a little better.
Yeah, I think so. For me, the Cam Davis, Seamus Power, Eric Van Rooyen up to McNeely, it's going to be tough for me to sneak in Brendan Steele all that much because I like all 4 of them over him. Now, He does fit the trend. He came in a tie for 2nd 3 starts ago, Ben. So if you're going on one of those trends I brought up with you, he does at least fit it nonetheless. So I thought I'd bring that up. Ryan Palmer, liked him a lot when he came off of the TOC. I think it was last year, if I'm not mistaken. It seemed like a great spot. He was playing good golf. It's not that way now. So 7,800 to me, much rather play Poseidon, who fits another one of those random trends I'll bring up. 8 of the last 10 have been ranked inside the top 50 strokes gained putting for the previous year at this tournament. So Poseidon, we know, is a top 50 putter in the world.
Yes, that's an easy hurdle for him to clear. Elite putter. He fits the formula because off the tee is just not his strength. And we've seen time and time again, even with like a guy like Cam Smith, just don't let it define you here. And it doesn't, because it's just not that driver heavy. And then get to the short game, he's going to win in that type of competition every time. So I get why you want to go there.
Yeah, if he hits, honest to God, if he hits the 9th fairway 4 straight days, he will probably come in the top 20 pretty easily. The 9th, obviously, the par 5, easiest hole on the course. The only way you get in trouble is if you don't hit the fairway there. It is a very important hole for DFS. The 18th hole is not, you don't need to hit the fairway as much. In fact, it's one of the hardest fairways to hit on the PGA Tour. So, all right, I think we've gotten now to 7,700 where we have a very good spike value this week. He is projected at 15% owned, but I don't think it's that bad. I'm talking about Siwoo Kim. Now, the reason I like him is the only stat that we saw last week that was really a struggle with was his irons. And we know with Siwoo, when he gets those irons going, it's a spike. Kind of like what you talk about with spike putters, Ben. Siwoo's that way with his irons. He's going to gain 10 or 8 in a week, and he's going to lose 5 the next week. So I like him here this week because of that at 7,700. Presents some great upside and does have a top 10 here.
Yeah, there's just no rhyme or reason for what happens with him. It just makes him a very good tournament play. You just have to know that he might not have it. I can look back, and this was a WGC, so he was forced to play 4 rounds, but he was forced to play 4 rounds at Century.
He was, yep.
In August at the St. Jude, he lost 17 strokes on the approach. Now, keep that in mind. He went in the water like 8 times in one hole. But what I want to highlight is that the next week at Wyndham, he gained 5 strokes with the approach. He can just flip it that quickly. It's not something that's a long-term issue. If it becomes a long-term issue, then you have to reassess. But I don't read anything into what he did at Century in terms of playing him this week.
Now it's creating maybe a teeny bit of a bubble if you include in Besidenhood as well. That Aaron Rye, who probably is overpriced at 7,700, maybe he fits perfectly in that field, is looking at under 5% ownership. So any other reason other than ownership to play Aaron Rye this week?
I'm a fan of Aaron Rye in life. I just don't think I can get there because I like Joel Dahman right below him. Guy who played last week, just couldn't putt, couldn't really get it around the green. Just think he's an overall better play. So it's always an opportunity cost thing. That's where I'd allocate those shares.
Yeah, a couple of hiccups for Damon. I think that added in a penalty stroke for forgetting in round 3 that it was no longer preferred lies in the fairways. Yep. I mean, kind of the stuff you expect to happen to Joel Damon kind of happened. Still like him. I think he's a pretty solid play at 7,600. I totally agree. If we want to talk a little bit about strategy between games, if you're playing cash this week, GPP, I would say Damon is certainly on the cash consideration side. After the stats we saw last week, Charles Howell kind of fits that bill as well. Where on the other side, Siwoo Kim and Cam Davis, I think probably fit the GPP build there. I know that Siwoo Kim's maybe a little higher owned, but the volatility that he shows probably would fit more in that realm. So a couple of other guys, Tom Hoagie, he's going to be a part of, he was my course and player preview, a guy that hits his mid to short irons very well, struggles with his wedges, but when you put a 6, 7, 8 iron in his hand, he's one of the best on the tour last year. So you think, Ben, that can translate, or do you think 7,600 is just too much for a guy that maybe outperformed his baseline a little bit last year?
Yeah, again, I mean, these are still quality players in a field like this. I'm just not looking to get there outside of maybe large field tournaments. So if he doesn't have to scramble much, and that's possible here, definitely a good iron player, and he can get it going. His short game at times can be very, very dangerous.
For sure. So let's see. We got I'd say about 15 minutes left here. We've got a full slate of content at 2 p.m. coming up right after us. The NHL Strategy Show with Cliffy and Harris. Then at 3, getting the Yahoo NBA Live Show with McCarthy and LaMarca. 3:30, we play on No House Advantage. The NBA Strategy Show with Edian and Terry is a great show. And then we're going to take you up to NBA Lock with NBA Deeper Dive, Lafayette and Adam, Eric and Greg on Live Before Lock, a full slate of content that I wanted to talk about there. Quickly, before you and I give some of our longer shots and then some one and done strategy, but at $7,300 sits the dapper looking Emiliano Grillo. Have you seen the Instagram picture I am talking about, Ben?
No. What did he do?
Okay. He and is it his wife or fiance? I won't put you to the task unless you know the answer to that question. Are dressed in all white. Grillo's got this like white tuxedo looking thing going on. His fiance's got this like lace white dress, and she's pregnant, or fiance, whatever.
I'm looking right now.
Yeah. So he's certainly looking like he's happy off the golf course. And at 7,300, are we going to be happy with him on the golf course this week, Ben?
Oh, good for Grillo.
I know, right? It looks like she's cute and she looks good.
Good for him. Yeah. Congratulations to the Grillos. It's my guy.
It is your guy.
He always gains here off the tee and tee to green, but he does that everywhere. So look at Tyler. Way to bay.
Way to get that up there. We love to see it.
Everyone asks me, obviously, like, what am I doing with Grillo? I'm sure he'll be in the pool. He's a pure iron specialist. At one point last year, he did find the putter. And that was something that we saw. We saw it happen. And then just as quickly as he found it, he gained strokes putting in 4 or 5 events. Then he lost in 9 straight after that. So you never know when it's going to happen. But this is a guy at this range. We're starting to get into the give me 4 rounds and I'll live with the result. I think that Grillo can once again make the cut here. Is he the safest player in the world? No. But he's still Grillo. He's still a ball striker, and he's still in the player pool.
Same exact category, maybe not with a dapper looking picture, but Patton Kazire, also the same price, kind of gives you that upside here at this course, a couple of top 10s, but both of those came after a Century Tournament of Champions appearance, if I'm not mistaken. I think if he gives you 4 rounds, you're going to love him at 7,300, but I think he's got some miscaught equity there as well.
Yeah, again, that's the type of guy. I mean, we've seen it with him that can get it done here. If he can't, if he gets in trouble off the tee or he doesn't have it, it's going to be problems. But, it's hard to make a cut on the PGA Tour no matter who you are. So it comes with the territory. It's the first event for a lot of these guys. Makes sense. Still, I don't know how you hone in on everyone. I'm going to have probably a wider player pool than I normally have this week.
Me, the same. All right, last one in this section before we get to our long shots. The best performers from the Korn Ferry Tour in the fall swing was Taylor Pendrith and Chad Ramey. I'll also throw in some maybe a little bit underperformers from last week, Stuart Sink and Brandon Grace. Of those four, do you have any big leans?
So again, I think there's an opportunity to buy on some of these guys that we've seen briefly. Taylor Pendrith, Chad Ramey. I'm going to bring in, if I can, Alex Smalley.
Yeah,
it's a guy that I played a good amount during the swing season, made some cuts, never really exploded, but he did have a 15th and a 12th. These are the type of guys, their price is not stable. They might be secretly amazing. They also might not be PGA Tour level. I think it's worth experimenting with some of those players.
Yeah, and Ben, I think we just had somebody in our chat ask if there's a one and done tournament. When we get there, you can kind of give the terms of that. It's actually pretty good, like $50K to first. So, all right, let's talk about a couple of long shots here. The first one I want to bring up, I already brought up Kajita Nakajima, so we don't need to talk about him. But how about Max McGreevy? He's getting some buzz as a player to be on the lookout for from the Korn Ferry Tour. Finished off his fall circuit with back-to-back top 20s. Gotta like that. Statistically, from those couple of events we saw in the fall, it looks like he's good with his mid to short irons, which we know is going to be popular here this week. So 6,900. Would you rather play him or Nick Hardy, who you and I have actually been following since this event last year?
Yeah, for me, I always go with the known. I would rather play Nick Hardy. I've seen him. I know he can do it. Just a better player in my mind. There's less variance there. You've got a lot of names. It's not, it's funny. There's a lot of guys that we've seen, like Cameron Young, guys like that who, they're newcomers too. They're just at least have some experience. I'd rather fall in that range than some of these other guys where we legitimately may have not seen them before.
Yeah, Sahith Theegala probably fits into the former category there, a top 10 in the fall circuit, 4 of 6 made cuts. We know by now, or we think we know, Theegala is one of those guys that's going to struggle off the tee at times, get a little wild, but pretty good iron play and a good putter. I like him 6,700. I think it's a good spot to go back to Theegala this week.
Yeah, he's another one. Obviously, we're talking about, again, this is where going all the way back to the beginning of the show, I believe it was Brian who asked a very good question about the strokes gained rounds. Someone like Theegala, who's super young and super raw, I weigh that differently than like Brian Harmon, who Chat was talking about, where he's been on the tour for a very long time. I think that Theegala is the type of player that if you want to buy early and take some lumps, potentially, you could also get paid off in a huge way.
Yeah, you sure can. And if we have time at the end, we'll get maybe a couple more of our long shots in there. But if we don't have enough time, that's where you can tune into Ben and Eric tomorrow. They're going to give you a bunch of long shots, some guys that may or may not make the cut in a great segment there. So stay tuned for that. That's a good one they always have fun with. All right, let's talk a little bit of strategy, PGA DFS strategy. Then we'll get into one and done. So I think that there's two ways to build. For me, the lineups that I'm starting are Leishman, Sung J M, and then I'll dip down. I'll get the Griot. I'll get the Patton Kizzire range, that 7,300 range, then probably one more up top. The other way I'm doing it is building with Corey Connors, Cam Davis, and another guy from that 8,000 range. You can pick EVR, you can pick power here. And this is where, for that fourth guy in, Ben, if you slide in a Nick Hardy or a Max McGreevy or Sahith Theegala that we've mentioned, you've got about 9,000 left per player. You can get in Taylor Gooch there, and I think it's a really quality balanced build while only using one of those guys down below. I've really been keen to that. Which way, if you only had one lineup to go, and I can even get contest specific, let's say the single entry $200, it's a great contest. There's a lot of people that like to play it, $50K to first on DraftKings. How are you looking to start a lineup like that?
Yeah, so, again, it's on a Tuesday, but my first look on something like that, I think I'm okay with trying to double up around 10K or even north of 10K and still maybe land in the low sevens. Like last man in, you've got like Smalley, Ramey, dare I say Russell Knox, Rio, those types. I still can find room for a Seamus, a Maverick, guys like that. Now, if you want to get aggressive, you can play 2 north of 10, and then you can play 2 in the 8s. You're just going to have to find a true punt in the 6s. There are guys.
Yeah, you're going to have to get Hardy and Hubbard. Let's say Hardy and Hubbard across the line, Hardy and McGreevy. I think it's doable. I'd rather just rely on one guy below 6K, 7K this week. It's just in the single entry. That's, I think, what the strategy that I'm going to go with for there.
I would agree. I mean, there's guys, I've seen like Wes Bryant's name has come up.
Yeah,
I get that build.
I'm
not going to do that in a single entry. I think it's kind of unnecessary, but in large field tournaments, if you get someone sub 65, it changes the whole look of your build. You're able to have that extra pay up money. So I get it. And some of those guys are going to make the cut. There's no doubt about it.
And then the $200 single entry, you get 6 of 6 through and you have the winner in another top 5. You've definitely got a chance in that contest. Maybe not last week, but that was a no cut. So, all right, let's talk about the one and done strategy. And why don't you talk about the big contest that goes on? I just signed up today. So there you go. Yeah. You're welcome for the free rake there. Because I'm just haven't had the greatest success, but I'm committed here to when we're doing this. If I haven't already pick then. So tell us about the one and done game going on.
Yeah. So there's obviously one and dones, all across the industry, but I will say that if you are looking for one, that Pat Mayo, who everyone kind of knows, you can check his Twitter. He has a large one and we have content for it. So that is really important. If you are playing in that, or you're playing in any one and done, we are going to have one and done in this very show. We also have it on the Awesemo odds channel, and I have an article posted ready to go. I think we'll give our picks in a second. I think it's just like when you're playing DFS, know the level of competition, know the size of the pool. If you're in a pool with 10 people, you don't need to be reaching or getting crazy. You can be very conservative the whole way. If you're in a pool with 5,000 people, I don't think it's crazy to take some names, not at the bottom of the board, but really planning, knowing you're going to need a big year to have a big score.
Yeah. And one other thing about the one and done, if this is going to be your first time getting into an event like this or a contest like this, have to understand that the majors pay more money. The Players Championship pays more money. So the strategy there is to utilize, say, the best golfers in those events. So it brings me to my first question to you, Ben. If Sung J M is who I would say the top of the board on my board this week, Sung J M, Cameron Smith are probably 1-2 for me right now. Is this a spot where I want to use Sung J M playing really good golf and say, okay, he's not going to win a major this year? Do you think that that's a good strategy to go with this week? Or do we want to save him for the Florida swing where we've already seen him take a W down?
Yeah. So again, I think if you're in a smaller pool, Sung J M is a great one and done pick. There's no doubt. But I think if you want to be different, if you want to be more aggressive, you can. I don't think that's unnecessary. I'm personally going to try to save Sanjay on most of my teams. I think I'm okay looking at like Taylor Gooch, Seamus, Maverick, guys that I know realistically, I doubt I play them this year, and you can get rid of them early. I think they make the cut and cash a good check. If you're not paying up for some of the guys you talked about, this is the type of event, especially if you're playing in the large one and done. I'm going to roll the dice and think that I can get some of these guys who played last week. I want my guy probably who have played last week, most likely. Maybe Maverick's the exception. I'm okay with that this week for one and done.
All right, let's give 2 then. Let's give
let's give one safe and one risk. How do you think that works?
Yeah, safe. I hate to steal Sung J M, but I just think
that's a good one.
Quality golf right now. And maybe I'm not being as risky enough, but I feel like if a lot of people concentrate on that Sung J M, Cameron Smith range, you might get Corey Connors lower projected than most other weeks when everything is all equal. So I think Corey Connors would be. He's not risky enough. I guess if you really wanted to get risky and you believe in short-term form and nobody is going to pick, I think the riskiest I'd go this week is Takumi Kanaya. If he pulls off a top 10 or a top 5 here, you're not going to use him anywhere else.
No.
Might be the spot if he has that weekend. He's going to be the lowest owned probably in a format.
You might be the only, legitimately one of the only people if you go that risky. So for me, I think Corey Connors is a phenomenal, safe, reasonable option.
He's my pick right now.
He is so good though. I do think you have to weigh, are you missing out on Corey Connors at a better event? He is that good right now. Same with Leishman. Leishman's a solid choice. But to me, I think it's a good amount of risk on Seamus. Like, don't worry about missing him out in bigger events. I'm not sure he's ready for WGC and major contention. I think he's certainly ready to compete week in and week out on these type of spots. So Seamus for me is a good one there, but you've got some good guys at the top of the board, particularly Sanjay, as you mentioned.
Yeah, if you wanted to just say, hey, listen, I want to start my season off by not going risky, would it be Sanjay for you?
It will. I mean, he's just, if you're not worried about not having him, I think you're not going to find anyone that's checking as many boxes.
That's a good point. All right. So did I miss anybody in the long shot section? I kind of only focused on that upper six. Is there anybody below 6,500, as we have like maybe 2 minutes left, that you want to bring up that I didn't mention?
Let's see. I like to find people that I don't know existed, not because we need to play them, but man, there are some names. Trey Mullinax is here. I'd like to see what he does. He has no form whatsoever, but when he pops, he pops. Just a name to keep in your mind. I'm not saying play Trey Mullinax, but we can glean information on what Hao Tong Lee, what Wesley Bryan, Hudson Swafford was thrown out.
What about JT Poston, dude?
JT Poston.
Is he going to make a cut anytime soon?
It would appear not. His irons, not worse than his irons being broken. His putter is broken, and his putter was his good weapon to begin with. Yeah, I don't see a ton down here. Again, you're going to find basically everyone around 1 or 2%. So you don't have to worry about ownership, but what are you paying up for? Unless you think you need Cam Smith and another 10K guy, you probably don't need anyone in the sixes to this low.
No, you certainly don't. And obviously, there are names down here. There's 132 players in the field, so you've got some options. Jerry Kelly is here.
Jerry Kelly's. Who is
6,000?
There's a guy named Callum Tyron. I've never heard that name in my life.
Yeah, he's a Corn Ferry Tour grad. He did okay at least in the fall swing. He was chalk 1 week after a top 10. Anyways, that's neither here nor there because I'm not playing him this week. Don't see it.
No.
If there are anybody else that pops up below 6,500, tomorrow night is the show that you're going to catch it on, Ben and Eric. What time is that on now, Ben?
It should be 8 Eastern. You'll see it go out, and we will be there. We'll be breaking these guys. Bring your questions. We've changed the format for Live Before Lock. We're not just going to do a repeat of what we did here. We're going to ask your questions. We're going to talk lineup construction. We're going to rank them. Denny McCarthy was just thrown out. Yeah, elite putter. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to put him with putter stacks, and I get that. I'm not looking to do that, but it's not impossible. So if you guys have guys that you missed, we've got the handles there at DFS Golfer 23, at JazzRaz DFS. Always happy to answer some questions that we didn't get to in the Twitter world.
Absolutely. And do have some good contests this week. DraftKings year over year up about 20% from last year. So some really good momentum. We will be stateside next week. We kick off the California swing with the American Express, or formerly known as the Desert Classic. So until then, everybody, thank you for joining here. Good luck at the Sony Open, and we will see you on the other side. Cheers, everybody.